present and emerging. And of course, it's very important to us here in Melbourne, our Indigenous community, and acknowledging the lands on which we live and work. So if there are any Indigenous students with us today, either Australian Indigenous students or others, welcome to you too. And I'm sure that you're very excited to be here with us, just as we are to have you with us here today too. Okay, so if you've been to Melbourne before, then you probably have seen all this, but if you haven't been to Melbourne, this is what you can look forward to when you come. So here's an aerial shot of the campus, and that big sports oval is at the northern end of the campus, which is a bit like an arc. And you can see, looking into the screen, if you like, that the city of Melbourne is right next to us. So we're really closely located into the city of Melbourne. So here, at this end of the campus is where the sports fields are, and those really lovely old buildings, a couple of them do look a little bit like Hogwarts sports, the colleges where a lot of the students stay, our local students and also international students can stay at the colleges there. And it's a beautiful place to be and very closely located to the main buildings on the university campus. So this sort of area around here on the, as you look into the screen, is where the main university campus is. And if you go to the left of screen, which is east of the campus, then there's a tram that goes right down Swanston Street from here, goes all the way down into the city of Melbourne. And there's another one going off to the west that goes down Elizabeth Street into the city of Melbourne. So we're very, very closely located to the centre, and there's easy access. So lots of our students live downtown or in neighbouring suburbs. So lots of public transport gets you into the centre of the campus. Probably, maybe not in my lifetime at the university, depending on how long I'm going to stay here for, but maybe yours, in particular, if you decide to stay with us and do graduate work, there's going to be a train line here too, right in the middle of Bratton Street. So it's going to be an extension of the underground loop. So lots of you living in different places have an underground railway system. We have one too. Ours is reasonably short, but this is going to extend that loop out to the university. So there's going to be other ways you can get to the university other than tram. So that's pretty exciting for people who live a bit of a distance from the university. Now, right here in this circle on the corner is the place that we called Stop One. And Stop One, as the name suggests, is a place that you go for all your administrative needs, and it's like a one-stop shop. That's where the name comes from. And it's like if you've got an enrolment problem, if you've got to change a course, if you need to find out about your student card, all of those kinds of things all happen in one place called Stop One. And then just going a bit further off Swanston Street, there's Lygon Street, where there's lots of restaurants and entertainment place to eat and hang out with your friends. You can get a coffee, get some food. There's a few shops there. So that's really close by without having to go all the way downtown. And on the other side of the campus, there is the medical precinct. So across here on this side of the campus, there's the Royal Children's Hospital, the Royal Melbourne Hospital, the Peter Doherty Centre, the new Cancer Hospital. There's a whole bunch of fantastic research environments there right on the other side of Elizabeth Street. So that's like a 2-minute walk from the centre of the campus. What's also been happening in that part of the campus, I don't know if you've heard a lot about what's been going on here about the pandemic response and a lot of the modelling and so on that's been driving the way we've been living in Melbourne and thinking about vaccine control and development. That all happens over in that part of the world too. So it's a very vibrant area of the campus, and I'm sure you will be really excited to be here. Hopefully next year, I'm going to say, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed next year, Deb.
Fingers crossed, that's all I can say. Okay, so let's start talking about the Bachelor of Science. So this is the building on campus too, the Peter Hall building. Actually, this is my building. This is where I live. I'm a mathematician, and this is where the School of Maths and Stats is housed. So that's a shot from us, and a couple of students wandering past with their science hoodie on. So what we really wanted to do today was give you a bit of an idea about the rules that govern the degree that you're just about to start, and thinking about what's available to you, what sort of flexible options there are, what sort of extracurricular activities you might be thinking, what sort of supports you have, and how you can put all those things together to make this your BSc. So there's not much point of having a degree with so much flexibility in it like ours if nobody takes advantage of it. That would be really sad. So we want you to be sure that you know all of the things that are happening and all of the things that you can build into your package of study, so you've got a uniquely designed program that suits your needs and the sort of career and future that you would like to have.
I think it's important to note, sorry to interrupt you, Deb. I think it's important to note that today we won't cover every single thing that you need to know about your entire degree, because the reason we're doing that is because we want to make sure that you focus on the things you need to know now. So we're trying not to overwhelm you specifically. So hold your horses. Any questions for later on, we're going to make sure you get them.
Excellent. Thanks, Case. So yeah, as Casey said, the main part of this session today is about the orientation. So what do you have to do right now? If we told you the whole package of the deal all at once, you would just be overwhelmed and you'd forget the really important things that you probably need to know today. So we'll focus on what you need to do today, maybe, and this week, and then the other questions and will come just in time when you need to know them for lots of students. Okay, so orientation week starts today, and of course what that means is that, well, what does an orientation mean? It just means to find your direction, start to find your way, navigate around, well, if you're on campus, around campus, but since you're online, you'll be navigating your way around the online world and trying to figure out what you need to do before classes start next week. So it's very close, a week away from the beginning of semester. And of course, once you're into the course proper, then you'll start to explore, participate and adapt the way you're thinking about things when you actually get some more first-hand knowledge of what it's like to be a student with us. So it's really this part, the orientation, that we're going to focus on today. So selecting your first two subjects, how to enrol in your subjects and to register for your classes. We won't talk about the enrolment and registration process so much today, but there will be sessions on during the week, I'm guessing, for those things. Today we're thinking about selecting subjects. What do you need to be thinking about as you go through and make your decisions about the subjects you're going to start next week if you haven't already? Okay, so we're here at the left-hand side of this screen. So trying to understand your career, your degree. That's what we're doing today. Later on in the sessions, you'll meet your peers. So you'll be able to, there's a get to know you session. And is a peer meeting of peers later on this week, Casey?
So after this session today, there is a BSc social, and our peer mentors will be there to kind of welcome you and give you a taste of what peer mentoring will look like. And then in week 2, that's when you get to meet your peer mentor, but we'll give you some more information about that shortly.
Cool. And then, of course, later on in the week, there'll be things like academic skills and clubs and societies, intro to the uni. So there's lots of things available to you over the week. So don't forget to go in and look at the whole program for orientation. You don't have to go to every single thing on the program, but it's a good idea just to make sure you know the basics as you go into next week. So here we are today. So looking at understanding the degree, and then up next will be meet your BSc peers after this session. And as I said, next week, all sorts of stuff about getting ready for study, academic skills, and so on. Okay, so let's go into understanding your BSc. I'm glad to say that's not one of our past students standing behind those people, is it, Case? With the skeleton, not a forgotten student who's turned into a skeleton behind there. Not one of ours.
Potentially, you never know.
So this is obviously some of our students in one of the biology labs. Okay, so understanding your degree, we're going to give you an overview of the Bachelor of Science. So you'll need to make sure you listen to what we're saying there, have some questions ready if you need to when we get into the chat session. And of course, there's lots of online resources. If there's a more technical question that we don't get to today and you still need some help, there'll be lots of information online. And also Stop One will give you bigger questions like course advice and enrolment assistance if you need it. So there'll be links online to all of those things as well.
And you can pull up your phone now and scan those
QR
QR codes.
QR code, yeah.
I think it's important just to remember that today is an introduction, but there is a little bit of responsibility on you guys to investigate and to ask afterwards, because you're not going to remember everything that we say today. But by using those 2 resources that I've linked in there, it'll really help you to feeling a lot more confident as you go around planning your degree.
Absolutely. And of course, one thing that I was saying to a student just last week, the most successful students at the university are the ones that ask the most questions and take advantage of all the things that we have on offer. So figuring out what those things are and how you can use them to your best advantage is a really important skill that you'll utilise through the BSc. Okay, so here's basically sort of the roadmap of what we're going to do today. So we're going to talk about the structure of the Bachelor of Science. So understanding the course components that you'll need to think about. And there's lots of components to the course, and we're so used to it now, we use a lot of terms and words that we just roll off the tongue, and we forget sometimes that students starting out won't have heard these terms or words, and they sort of know what they mean, but they don't know precisely what they mean. So we're going to go through those things in a little bit of detail so you'll have a good understanding of what all the bits and pieces mean and how it all fits together. We'll talk a little bit and do a bit of an overview of the science majors, and there's one of those words already, but we'll explain that to you as we go through. We'll talk about your first year enrolment requirements, and then we'll talk about breadth, there's another one of those words, and co-curricular experiences as we go through as well. So lots of things to talk about. Okay, so let's start off talking about the structure of the Bachelor of Science. And so on the screen, you can see that there's a grid with some coloured boxes, and every coloured box means something. So first of all, each of the coloured boxes is a subject, a standard subject in the BSc, and each subject in the BSc is worth 12.5 credit points. So all the subjects in the Bachelor of Science are worth the same amount of credit points, 12.5. And to complete the degree, you need to take 24 subjects, and that gives you a total of 300 points. So unless you do 24 subjects, 300 points, then you won't qualify for a Bachelor of Science. And those points and subjects need to be within a range of conditions. So you can't just pick any 24 subjects. There are rules around how those subjects fit together to give you a Bachelor of Science. And the rules really are about starting off with foundation subjects in year 1, building to more complicated subjects in year 2, and then more complicated subjects in year 3, getting a depth of understanding in a particular area, and some breadth subjects along the side. So there are rules around the number and type of each of those subjects that you can take to make up your Bachelor of Science. The way the grid is put together is that each horizontal row is meant to be a semester of study. So if you were a student who went through and did the course plan as it's written on paper, then the chances are you would do 4 subjects per semester for 6 semesters over 3 years. So you do 2 semesters a year, 4 subjects in each of the semesters, and in 3 years you'd have a degree. Of course, it's not like that quite anymore, because students will reduce their load. Some students will do 3 subjects in the semester and pick up a subject in winter or summer, or some kind of variation. Lots of students will think, well, actually, I don't really need to finish in 3 years. I'd like to spread it out because I'm doing some part-time work, or I'd like to take, I've got other hobbies that I want to keep going along the side. And so lots of students don't finish their degree in 3 years, and they don't do 4 subjects a semester. So you don't have to do it this way. This is just the neatest way to present it, because it would be a bit random if we didn't have some net way of presenting it. But whether you do 4 subjects a semester like this or you do winter and summer subjects, that doesn't change the way the 24 subjects need to be configured. So all of these boxes that you can see that are highlighted in red are called science electives. And what a science elective is a choice of subject from the science disciplinary areas that we offer you. So, and it doesn't matter whether the science is a math subject or a bio subject or a physics subject or a geography subject. In the handbook, you'll see them when you go in and have a look if you're not quite sure, that all of these subjects are called science electives. And the science electives have 2 functions. Of course, you're doing a Bachelor of Science, so you certainly have to do some science electives. But some of the science electives you choose will be those subjects that lead to your major area of study. Others will be just subjects that you're interested in, and some of them will be complementary areas of study to the major that you're interested in. So they'll all build around the major that you end up with as you graduate from the university. So they're the science electives. These things now in yellow, we've called subject sets. Now in first year, we're very aware that students can get very anxious about the subjects that they need to take, because for some students will know exactly what major they want to take, so they can work their way back and figure out what subjects they need to take in first year. But for lots of students, they don't know which major area of study they want to take, or they might be tossing up between a few different areas. And so they don't really know which first year subjects to choose. And they're anxious about, do I choose this one? If I choose that, can I change my mind? What if I do this one and this one together? Will I miss out? How do I put the whole thing together? So what we've done to make things easier is to present first year subjects in what we call subject sets. And they generally incorporate a pair of subjects. So it might be a pair of math subjects in semester 1 and semester 2, or a pair of physics subjects in semester 1 and semester 2. And then students can choose the subject sets, and that will help them with their enrolment. Of course, you don't have to stick to the sets. You can mix and match them as you choose. But so they're just there for advice and to help students along the way if that's what they need. Breadth subjects are those ones over there in the pink, and students in the Bachelor of Science have to do a minimum of 4 breadth subjects over their degree. The breadth subjects are subjects that are not science. So I'll repeat that. Breadth subjects are subjects that are not science. So the idea is that students do their science electives in the core of their degree, and then they take some subjects outside of those disciplinary areas to help them develop transferable skills. Or maybe you've got maybe you really like music, you can take music as a breadth subject. Maybe you want to learn another language. Maybe you're interested in going into law. You can use the breadth spots to try out some subjects in law, for example, to help you. Or sometimes it will just be looking at a subject from a different perspective. So when you look at some of the breadth subjects, you might think, actually, that looks a little bit sciencey, and they've said that these weren't science subjects. You'll find that even though they look a bit sciencey, they might be looking at it from a science type issue, but from a different perspective. So they might be looking at, for example, the social or ethical impacts of science that's being done. So the emphasis won't be on the science, but on the impact of that. And so you might be thinking about, for example, one subject that's a breadth subject is food for a healthy planet. And so you're thinking about this, a bit of science in there, but you're thinking about how society approaches making food distribution equitable across the world. So it will be looking at an issue from multiple perspectives. So lots of different ways to use those breadth spots. And these ones down the bottom where it says breadth or science elective, you have, as I said, there's 4 places where you must have a breadth spot. So you have to do 4 subjects as breadth. And then you have another 2 subjects in your degree that you can choose to use as breadth or science. So they're up to you to use either way. For example, if you were thinking about learning a language, you might want to use those spots to put more of your language in. But if you were doing a really sort of interdisciplinary major, you might want to use those breadth or science electives as science electives, because you want to get a more broad view of science by the time you get to third year. So different ways to use those spaces, and you'll know when you get there how you're going to make those things work.
Deb, can I ask a question? There's
Yep.
a few questions coming in about how it looks on this study plan. One of the questions was, do I need to take those breadth or science electives at the time that they're highlighted here on this screen? Does it have to be in third year, or can I mix it up a little bit and take them a bit earlier, or how does that work?
So I think there's probably going to be a few more questions, to be honest, before we get there, and then I think some of those questions will become clear, because it's going to depend on some other factors in your study plan as well. So hold that question, and if you still need to ask it by the time we've gone through a little bit more, then we'll go back and it'll be easier to answer it. So
okie dokie.
Thanks, Kate. In those 4 blue boxes now, we've called them the major subject. Now, a major in the Bachelor of Science is a key component in the degree, and every student that goes out of the BSc needs to have a major. A major is a combination of 4 subjects in a disciplinary area at third year, and for some majors, they'll be prescribed as 4 particular subjects. Some will have compulsory subjects with some electives from a small list of electives as well. So each major is constructed slightly differently, but the common thing it has is that the major will give you a really, really deep understanding of a particular area of study. For example, a major could be physics. So those 4 subjects would be coming from the physics area, and in the physics major, not all of the major subjects are prescribed, so there's a couple of compulsory ones, and then the other ones you get to choose from a small list of electives. But as I said, each major is slightly different in structure. Okay, so this is the bit that I wanted to get to before your question could be easily answered. So we've got science electives, we've got breadth subjects, we've got breadth or science electives, and we've got major subjects. So we've got that sort of language down pat now, but there are some restrictions on the sorts of things that you can take at each year level as well. So there are level 1 restrictions that work as follows. So students can do a maximum of 10 level 1 subjects. Okay, so on this plan, we've got 8 level 1 subjects, so 2 of the rows of 4 subjects, so that's 8. We've got 8 level 2 subjects and 8 level 3 subjects within a certain configuration. So no, you don't have to take 8 level 1s, 8 level 2s and 8 level 3s, okay? That was why it was a little hard to answer that question. So each year level has a minimum requirement on it. Year 1 has a maximum requirement on it too, and that is 10 subjects. So that means you could, for example, take 6 science subjects in level 1 and 3 breadth subjects in level 1, and then you could bring your breadth or science elective into year 2, depending on the way you wanted to configure your program. Now, when I said, let me give you another couple of restrictions as well. There's another restriction on level 1 subjects, and that is a maximum of 3 subjects in any particular area. So you're not able to come in and do 6 physics subjects at level 1. So we want you to do a range of subjects at level 1 so that it will keep your options open and you'll be able to go on without being blocked in year 2 and year 3. So really what we try to do is encourage students to take 3 different areas of study in year 1 so that they can get a bit of a taste of what's going on in first year to help them make up their mind. Not all students do 3, some students do 4, some students do maybe a bit more than that, but we're saying we need you to do at most 2 different areas of study And so there's a maximum of 3 subjects in any disciplinary area at level 1. There's also a maximum of 3 subjects of breadth at level 1. So you can see that you've got 4 breadth subjects and 2 choices, whether you do breadth or science. You couldn't do all of those at level 1. You couldn't even do 4 of those at level 1. So at most you can do 3 of those breadth subjects at level 1. So now I think you can see how those sorts of things are controlled. The answer to that question was a little bit controlled by these restrictions on the level 1 subjects. Now I will say, because this is a very important point, we have 10 level 1 subjects available for students, not necessarily so you can go in and just do 10 level 1 subjects off the bat. Really, we don't want you to do 10 level 1 subjects right away, and 8 is about the right number. That means what happens is, if you do your 8 spots in level 1, you go into year 2 and you go, oh, actually, the major that I really want to do now isn't the one I thought it was, and I can't do it because I've forgotten to do, or I didn't actually cover off this science elective in year 1, and it's a prerequisite. I need to do it for my major. What am I going to do now? Well, if you've got 2 level 1 subjects still available, you can then use one of those spots to do that additional subject that you didn't know about. If you've used them right up the front, then I'm afraid you can't go back, because that's the maximum number that you have. So not using all those level 1 spots right up the front is very important, because you keep them as an insurance card, if you like, for if you change your mind and need to do another level 1 subject as you go through. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense, and if you've got some questions, we can answer that as we go through. There's also a course progression rule. So students must do 4 subjects, so 50 points at each level before they go on to the next level. So when you come in as a year 1, in first semester, almost all of you, unless you've got some advanced standing, you will be doing 4 first year subjects before you can do any second year subjects, okay? Once you've done you don't have to do all of your 8 first year subjects, but you do need to do 4. In your second semester, you might then be able to pick up some level 2 subjects, but again, you'll need to do 4 level 2 subjects before you then go on to level 3 subjects. And what that means is that there's a progression between the difficulty at each level and the sophistication at which you approach the content at each level. So it's very important that you don't jump into subjects at level 3 before you're ready. So there is this course progression rule that, so you don't have to complete a whole year, but you must do part of that year before you go on to the next level of subjects. So as I said, in first semester, that means you'll be doing level 1 only. And of course, as I said, every student must complete a major area of study, and that's these 4 subjects at the end. So I hope that makes sense, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through. Okay, so as I said, I've talked a bit about this already. So a major is 50 points of level 3 study. It provides a depth of understanding of a particular area. It develops specific skills related to that area of study, and generally will be based on level 1 and 2 prerequisite study before you can get there. Now, what does prerequisite study mean? A prerequisite is a subject that you must complete before you go on to the next subject. Some subjects in level 2 and level 3 and even level 1 won't have any prerequisites, but it's up to you to make sure you know what those prerequisites are, if indeed there are any, and they're all listed in the handbook when you go in to look at the subjects. So it's really important that you are aware of the prerequisite structure in your course plan. We put those subjects there for a reason, and it means that, so if I'm doing a level 2 maths subject that's got a prerequisite of a level 1 maths subject, it's because there's something in that level 1 maths subject that I must know and understand before I do the second subject, because it builds on it. So we can't have you going into the second subject and going, oh, I've never seen any of that stuff before, because then you wouldn't be able to do the level 2 subject. So some of those things are stacked upon each other, and it's all listed in the handbook. So I'm going to give you a bit of an example of that. So here's an example of a data science major. So at level 3, so if you look in the handbook, generally the course codes look like a 4-letter code. So MAST means maths and statistics, comp means computer science. So that 4-letter code will give you an idea of the disciplinary area. And that first number in that code tells you what year level the subject's at. So this is the data science, 4 subjects in the data science major. The number 3 tells you that they're the level 3 subjects. And in the handbook, it will tell you that these are the major subjects. So they're the level 2 subjects. So what else does that look like? Well, level 3 subjects. Before you can do those level 3 subjects, you will have needed to do these level 2 subjects. So these have got the 2, so they're the level 2 subjects. And those subjects are prerequisites. So MAST 2005 is a prerequisite for the one called linear statistical models. Elements of data processing is a prerequisite for machine learning. So if you don't have those subjects covered off, you won't be able to do those subjects in your major. And of course, the way prerequisites build, they'll have first year prerequisites as well. And these ones have these 2 subject sets. So if you did the math subject set, Calculus 2 and Linear Algebra, and the computing subject set, Foundations of Computing and Foundations of Algorithms, you'd have the prerequisites you need to go on to do the second year subjects and then the data science major. So you can see how these things build around each other to get to your major. Okay, so I keep talking about these things called the majors. What do they look like? Well, they sort of look like this. As they're flashing up in front of you, there are 42, I'll repeat that number, it's not the answer to life, the universe and everything. If you've ever read any Douglas Adams books, you'll know what I mean. But it is the number of the majors in the Bachelor of Science. And you can potentially, right now, any of these majors in the degree are open to you. And as you can see, there are some that are science type majors, so physics, maths and stats, chemistry, they're all things that you know. Other science majors you might not be so familiar with, geography, geology, all of those majors are open. There are also majors in the health science pathways, so pharmacology, immunology, I'm looking for human structure and function, there we go, right in the middle. So all of those are health science type pathways. We've also got animal health pathways like animal health and disease. So that's, if you're interested in going into veterinary medicine, that's the one that you'd be aiming for. There's lots of engineering pathways as well. So mechanical systems, electrical systems, and so on. And of course, agricultural science as well. So all of those majors open to you right now in the Bachelor of Science. And we'd like you to keep as many of those options open for as long as you can. Okay, so how do you figure out what you need to do to make sure you get to the major that you want to get to? Well, if you already know what you want to do and you think, I've wanted to do an immunology major since the time I could spell immunology, then that's great. And so what you would do would be you'd go into the handbook, you'd look up the immunology major, you'd see what the subjects were you needed to do, and you could work your way backwards to make sure you'd satisfied all the second year prerequisites and then all the first year prerequisites. That's one way of building your degree. That would tell you exactly what you needed to do, and then you could pick some subjects that worked around that. If you're not quite sure what the major is that you want to do, so you'd be thinking about being having an exploratory view of your degree, you could think, well, actually, not quite sure what I want it to be, but I'm really interested in the weather and I'm really interested in physics. So you'd look under those things in the handbook and you'd pick the subjects that speak to your interests, and then make sure that you put some other things with them to keep some majors open that you might be interested in getting to. For most students, they do a bit of both. They know sort of what they like and they have an idea of a major, and they try to keep those two, work from both ends of the degree into the middle to make sure they've got all their bases covered, okay? We'd really like you to review your plan at the end of each semester, because it's almost certainly true, even for the students who think they know exactly what they want to do right now, most of our students don't end up taking out the major that they thought they were going to when they first walked in the door, because they think chemistry was my favourite subject at school. They come to the university and chemistry turns out to be a little bit different than school. And all of a sudden they love physics when they didn't really like physics at school, or they like maths, or they like something else. And so they change a little bit. They also find out about subjects that you didn't have any idea about when you were at school, and major areas of study that you never even heard of before. And all of a sudden that really becomes your passion. So make sure you review at the end of every semester to make sure your course plan is still doing what you want it to do to get you where you need to go, and where you need to go might have changed. Filling in subjects now does not lock you in to what you're doing next year or next semester or the year after. So you get, even in the first semester subjects, you can change those subjects up until the end of week 3 in semester if you think you've made a mistake. So we're trying to keep this as flexible as possible. One thing that's really important too when you're making changes is that you are in making sure that you meet the course requirements that I said as well. Some students think the system, the enrolment system, will make sure that happens for them. It doesn't. It's about self-enrolment and making sure that you meet the course requirements. The system is the combinations and permutations are far too complicated for even a big database computer system to be able to make sure all of these things work. So you need to make sure what the requirements are, make sure you're fulfilling the requirements. If you're not sure, that's when you go to stop 1 and you ask for advice, and someone will help to make sure that you're doing it. But you need to make sure that that's happening. Okay, so let's do a bit of an example of a student plan. So here's a plan. It's a completely empty plan. This is probably what yours looks like at the moment. And this is a plan of a student who is interested in going into a Doctor of Dental Surgery. So they wanted to do a graduate plan, a graduate study program in dental surgery. And so they had a look to see what the prerequisites were. What do I need to do if I'm going to go and do a Doctor of Dental Surgery? And that said, there were subjects that they needed to do at second year, and here they are. So they said, right, for my Doctor of Dental Surgery, I have to have these subjects. And so what the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put them into my plan. So whatever happens around it, I know I've got these really important bases covered off. And you can see that they're doing a second year subject in their breadth or science elective. So they've used that spot in their third year to pick up one of their core second year prerequisites. That's perfectly fine. So then they say, okay, I know I've got to do these second year subjects. What first year subjects do I need to do to make sure I've got the prerequisites covered? So then you'd go back in and you'd put in your first year subjects. So here we've got a biology subject set here, a pair of biology subjects. And this student had clearly not done chemistry at school because they've started off with fundamentals of chemistry. So instead of doing the subject set chemistry 1 and chemistry 2, they've started off with fundamentals, and then they've taken the chemistry 1-2 subject set. So they've got 3 chemistry subjects they need to do. So chemistry and biology were the prerequisites for their core second year study. So then they've got some space. So they decided that they were interested in understanding about geography. So they've done another pair of science subjects for their interest, and they've used their breadth spots to start to study Japanese. So they've got 2 breadth subjects in Japanese, and they've got their first year science program all filled in now. So you can see that this student is doing 9 level 1 subjects. They've still got 1 level 1 subject up their sleeve in case they get to the end of semester 1 and they go, oh, actually, I don't like these subjects now. I've actually decided I want to do engineering and I have to go back and do some maths. They've got space that they can still do that in. So be aware that filling up 10 level 1 spots at the beginning is a way, it could block you in. So be a little bit careful about that. Okay, so they've got level 1s all sorted now. Now they've got decided that they're going to continue with their Japanese, so they're using the rest of their bread spots for their Japanese. They've decided that they're actually interested in geography after all. Maybe they've done this at the end of year one. Wow, those level 1 geography subjects were really interesting. I'm going to do my major in geography. So you can see that that's where their 4 blue ones are. They're still on track to get into the Doctor of Dental Surgery because those subjects are the core ones that they needed to do. And then they're filling in subjects around it. So doing an anatomy subject, doing an internship subject, doing a uni-breadth subject that speaks to their interest in geography and global issues. So thinking about global health from a security and sustainability point of view. Oops. And right, so that's their program filled in. I was thinking there was a blank spot, but this spot on the right there is the spot really where their chemistry subject fits in. So they've got their 24 subjects all ready to go. They've got their level 1 subjects. They're still on track to do the Doctor of Dental Surgery, and they've got a major in geography. So that's a fantastic course plan. As I said, here was their first year program, and just thinking about if this was your first year program, even with that first year biology set, that first year biology subject set, just as an example, means that any of these of the 42 majors are still open to you. So each of these majors has biology as a prerequisite to some of the subjects in the pathway to those majors. So that's a subject set that opens up a lot of avenues. Of course, when you put chemistry in there as well, that would open up other avenues for you. And so it goes. But I won't go on into more detail about that. That's a conversation that you could have with the course planner. And we do have sample course plans on the science faculty webpage as well. So make sure you have a look at those. Okay, so very quickly, I keep talking about the handbook. The handbook is the Bible of the BSc. That's where all the rules and regulations live. Make sure you go in and familiarise yourself with that handbook and that you know your way around it and you're familiar with the rules. It's very important that you do that. Transitioning to university, and you'll see more about this as we go through the week. We have a peer mentoring scheme. So you'll be paired up with a peer mentor very soon. And that will be a person who's a later year undergraduate student or a postgraduate student. You'll be in a group with about 10 students and you'll stay together with that peer mentor and those 10 students and meet up across the semester. And they'll answer all the questions that normal first year students have, like, oh, how do I take notes in a lecture? Do I really have to go into a tutorial? I'm finding the workload a bit heavy. What should I do? Can you give me some tips and tricks? So that's what your peer mentoring will be about. Then in semester 2, you'll be assigned to an academic advisor and they'll be able to talk to you about internship opportunities and what it's like to work in industry, what it's like to do research. What are the opportunities? Is it a good idea to go on exchange? So they'll be able to give you all of that kind of advice as you go through your degree, and they'll stay with you right the way through till 3rd year. And then when you get into 3rd year, if you're interested in going out into the workplace, then you might be interested also in getting a STEM industry mentor and an internship, and that will be available to you in 3rd year as well as your academic advising program. So in your peer mentoring program, as I said, you'll be teamed up with a peer mentor and a group of first year students very soon. You'll have a session with your group and that will help you figure out, as I said, all the tips and tricks and the services that are available for you as you go through your degree. It's a great way to start to make friends in the degree because you'll be with the same group of students for a while, and that'll give you a great head start. We have lots of students who get a little bit lost when they first start off in the degree, but this is a great way to make sure you know everything that there is to know as you start off and work through your first semester. So I'm sure you will talk a bit more about that in the next session. The university is quite complicated and students often don't know where to ask questions. So if you're coming to the faculty to ask questions, that will usually be about what the curriculum questions are about, your results for your subjects, the assessment, and all of that kind of academic program sort of questions. If you're asking more general questions like course planning, overseas exchange, academic skills, career services, all of that sort of counselling goes out of stop 1. So if you're looking about general big picture questions about the degree as a whole, that would happen at stop 1. So direct your questions to stop 1. Otherwise, if it's about this particular subject or this particular content or your results or your assessment, that happens in the faculty and more generally in the relevant school that your subject's sitting in. The school is the where the disciplinary areas are. Okay, so make the most of your BSc. There's lots of things available to you. So there's first year learning centres to help you if you get stuck. There's counselling services if you're feeling a bit lost, and lots of people are making use of the counselling service because it's been hard doing stuff online during the pandemic. So that's available there for you. Some students need academic skills, so they're not quite sure how to structure an essay or do time management. That's all available to you. So lots of services available. And as I've said, course planning, fun things like clubs and societies. Some students need a bit of extra financial help. So there's a financial aid service. So there's all of those opportunities and services available to you. And again, there's more information on the website that will help you navigate through those different things. So very quickly, what's happening next week? Well, we were hoping that some of our students at least would be on campus on Monday. We're not quite sure whether that's going to happen yet. But either way, whether there's some students on campus or not, there will be online subjects for all. And so you're going to be able to access your subjects online through the Canvas web pages. So make sure you go in, once you enrol in your subjects, those Canvas pages will open to you. And on that system, that's where the emails will come to you from the subjects, and of course your student portal where the university emails will come. So make sure you read your emails regularly from the university, especially at times like this, because things do change quite quickly and we try and get the information out to you as quickly as possible, but it's up to you to read the email we send you. And of course, if you have any questions, make sure you get in touch with Stop 1. Oof, I'm done. Case, let's answer some questions. Have we got a heap?
There's a few coming in. I think I'll just quickly jump in and say that a lot of the questions that you have, your peer mentor will also be able to provide you with some guidance about their own personal experience of how they sought advice through student services and went and saw a course planning advisor to be able to get advice and things like that. So make sure that you ask questions of your peer mentor and of your group as well, because a lot of you have been answering questions for each other in the chat. Deb, it's actually been quite nice to see. Some students are very knowledgeable. So there's a few questions, and one is, the main one that's coming up is a bit of confusion around level 2 subjects. So when can I take level 2 subjects? Can I start taking them straight away? How many level 1 subjects do I have to do before I'm able to move on to level 2?
Right. So for most students, the answer is no, you can't do a level 2 subject straight away. So as I said, there's a progression rule and you have to complete 50 points at a particular level before you go on to the next level. Now, if you're a student that's coming in with some advanced standing, that means you've already done some study somewhere else and you've been given credit for that study, that counts towards your 50 points. So if you've done some level 1 study elsewhere, then that still counts as level 1 study. But if you're a student who's coming in from scratch, the answer is you need to do 4 level 1 subjects, so 50 points of level 1 subjects before you can do a level 2 subject. And then you have to do 4 level 2 subjects before you can do a level 3 subject. So is that clear?
I think it's clear to me. And if it's not, then I'm sure that people will put things in the chat. But I had a really basic question for you, Deb. What semester are we in now? What semester are we starting?
Oh, yes. So for me, because we started at the beginning of the year, this is semester 2. But for you, it's your semester 1.
So in the academic calendar, it is
It will
called
be
semester
two.
But it's your first semester of your degree. So you course plan according to the first semester of your degree for subjects that are available in semester 2, 2021. That's really important information.
Yeah. So in the handbook, and it will be a little bit confusing, in the handbook, the semester of offer is based on a start year program. So you'll be, this semester, you'll be a little bit out of sync if you're thinking about this as your first semester, but on the university calendar, it's semester 2.
Mm-hmm. And so Deb, when I'm taking as a first year student, do the 4 subjects that you're talking about, you know, and that you mentioned in the study plan and that 50 points, does that include a breadth subject, or is the breadth subject in addition to the 4 subjects?
No, that includes the breadth subjects. So any 4 first year subjects, any 4 level 1 subjects is what we mean. Of course, it's probably, if you're going on to second year science subjects, it's probably better to have 3 of those 4 subjects as science subjects rather than 2 science and 2 breadth. Because remember, the rules, sometimes students think of rules as being restrictive because they stop you from doing what you want to do, but the rules are based around what we think gives you the best preparation to be successful in subsequent study. So the rules are there to help you, not to hinder you. So what we're trying to say is that if you've got 4, if you've been successful in 4 level 1 subjects, you should be okay for your level 2. Of course, there are prerequisite things in there as well. But really, if you did any 4 level 1 subjects, you'd be fine to go on to level 2, provided the prerequisites were covered.
Sorry for interrupting you there, Deb. There's a few questions coming in about double majors and people wanting to have an understanding about how it is that they can specialise in 2 particular areas of study within the Bachelor of Science. And it would be great if you'd be able to explain to me how that works in the BSc and what options students have.
So we don't have something that's officially called a double major. So there's 2 things at play here. One is, we saw that if you satisfy, if you do those 4 subjects at level 3, that gives you a major. Now, there is a potential that students can do other level 3 subjects that give them the course completion requirements for an additional major. When students are in that position, so for example, it could be, let me think, if you did mathematical physics, that's a combination of maths and physics, but you might also have space in your degree to do other maths subjects that meant you satisfy the requirements of a maths major as well. Okay, so you have mathematical physics and maths. So you've satisfied the requirements for those things. We don't have a double major in the Bachelor of Science. So that means that you would need to choose which of those majors as a label you wanted to have written on your final graduation paper. Now, that doesn't mean you haven't satisfied the other requirements, you still have. And when that happens, if students really want to have that certified, then they can write to me and I can write them a letter of completion, so that I would say, Casey has graduated from the BSc with a major in mathematical physics, but she's also satisfied the requirements for a major in pure mathematics, for example. So it doesn't appear on her official transcript, but you've got an official letter from the university that allows you to show an employer that as well.
And there are a couple of other questions coming through, and a lot of it is about, there's 2 main questions that are coming through, is that when can I start taking like my major subjects? Could I potentially take them in my 2nd year of study, or do I have to take them in my 3rd year of study?
Students can take major subjects in their 2nd year of study, as I said, so the only restriction in that is that if they're taking a major subject in their 2nd year of study, that means they will have had to do 50 points at level 2 before that, and they will have had to have satisfied all the prerequisites for that as well. Now, let me put some, warnings around that. I would be asking the question, why are you so keen to complete your major subject in second year? The major subject is where, if you're going on to graduate study, then the major area of study is what people are going to be interested in the most. This is what you graduate with. This is what even if it's not going on to graduate study, so going out into the workplace, they're going to be looking at your major. You're going to want to make those grades and that look as good as it possibly can. Potentially, if you've hurried to get that done in second year, it might not be the best plan to make sure you get the best mark for that subject. It might be, I don't know. But if it were me, I would be saying I want to be as well prepared for that major subject as I can to make sure that looks as good as it can. And so I would say that till year 3. But officially, you don't need to do that.
And Deb, can you tell me, if I was an international student, and I think there's 2 caveats to this, because international students right now could be located in Australia on a student visa, or they could be located overseas and therefore not on a student visa at the moment. Am I allowed to take a reduced study load?
I believe you now, actually, I probably shouldn't answer this question because this is really a student enrolment one. So I understand that there is a time limit on the student visa. And there are all sorts of rules and regulations about reduced study load. So I think I'm actually, instead of trying to answer this question badly, I'm going to say if you're one of the people who's, maybe Casey, you might know the answer to it, so you can answer it. But this is exactly the sort of question you'd go to Stop 1 and ask, because that's what they're there for. But Casey, do you know the answer, the actual real answer?
With the current border restrictions, it's a little bit more complicated. And what I will do is you will have a copy of your student newsletter, the BSc student newsletter, that will come out in your first week of study. We'll make sure to have a section with some FAQs with answers to a lot of the questions that were in today's session. And we'll make sure to have a link to to where you're able to get those answers from.
Yeah, so just in terms of the pandemic, there was last year, I believe, a relaxation on the student visa requirements so that anybody could do it without getting sort of necessarily approval, a reduced study load. But that deal's off the table. So that doesn't mean that students can't do it, but they can't just do it because they want to. They would need to have something officially signed off for some reason. I think that's the way it's working. But do go to Stop 1 or look in the BSc news. That's a good place to put it.
So that brings us to the end of the session. It's 5 o'clock. Deb has answered most of the questions that people have. But what I will say is that we've actually, Tiff has been in the background. Tiff is just a black screen with the words Tiff Wig at the moment, but you can see that she's there and she's been collating a lot of love response. There is a lot of questions that are coming in, particularly from our international students, Deb, around when can I come to Australia? Can I do exchange? Those kind of things. And I personally think it's a little bit difficult for us to be able to provide a time frame on that particular question around when it is that our students will be able to come to Australia. But all I know is that we're all desperately hopeful that it will be sooner rather than later, because we want to see your wonderful faces on campus as soon as we possibly can. Those questions are evolving, and they evolve as we get advice from the Australian government. And the university will provide you with as much notice as we possibly can about what will be happening, when we can welcome you back to campus, and how that welcome will happen when we're able to get you on campus in your lab coats with your gear ready to go and be doing your studies with us. Tiff is collating questions. We're going to put some answers together. We're going to create an FAQ site. Now, Tiff is also going to be, if you have any questions about course planning, we strongly recommend that you go to Stop 1, because a lot of you might need to have individual advice and support, but there's a lot of information, generic information on our websites that you'll be able to find some responses to. In the first newsletter, you'll have a link to all of the FAQs that we found out today, all the questions that you have. But after this, there is also the BSc Social, where there'll be more of you being able to connect to each other with peer mentors. And in week 2, you'll also have your peer mentoring session. So I like to think of orientation as a bit of an evolving process. Today is the first session. You won't get all the questions answered today, but this is the beginning of getting all your questions answered. And then over the course of the next few days, everything will start making a lot more sense. And that's when you have to investigate and ask. And that's when we're here for you to be able to provide you with that support.
Perfect. And can I just add to Casey's comment about welcoming international students back? We will absolutely, we're looking at the government rules and regulations, and as soon as we're allowed to we're not delaying here at the university. As soon as we're allowed to get students back on campus, we will be doing so. So don't think that we're dragging our heels on that. We're really keen to get our international students back for sure. It's not the same place as it was 2 years ago, I can tell you. So that's really all we can promise you at the moment, I'm afraid, but fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, Deb. It's exciting times. I'm hopeful that, well, exciting times, not so exciting if you're in Melbourne because you're in lockdown, but, I'm hopeful for the future. I'm going to say thank you very much. I hope that most of you will be coming to the BSc Social Bingo. If you haven't registered, it's going to be lots of fun. Good opportunity a lot of chat's been happening in the background. There's a lot more opportunity to have more chat and to meet other students and to make some friends ahead of starting classes next semester, next week. So go online if you haven't already registered, go on the orientation website, type in social, BSc Social, or just go to today and you'll be able to register. It starts in 25 minutes and I'll be there waiting to see you.